The funeral home had never felt smaller. Hundreds of people packed into wooden pews, their black clothes making them look like crows gathered for something terrible. The smell of lilies was so thick I could taste it. My 8-year-old daughter, Mira, lay in a white casket at the front of the church, her small hands folded over her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she'd named Mr. Hopscotch when she was 3. Her gymnastics medals were arranged around her, catching the light from the stained glass windows. She looked like she was sleeping, but her chest wasn't moving with those little breaths that used to comfort me when I'd check on her at night. I stood in the front row, my legs shaking so hard I had to grip the pew in front of me. The pastor was saying something about angels in heaven, but his words sounded like they were coming from underwater. All I could focus on was how still she was, how wrong it looked, how her hair was styled differently than she liked it because the funeral director didn't know she hated having her bangs pushed back. Then my mother's voice cut through everything, sharp and clear and accusatory. "This is what happens when mothers put themselves first," Renata announced, loud enough for the entire church to hear. She died because Vera was too busy chasing men to watch her properly, too busy with her dating apps and her night shifts to notice her own daughter needed her. The pastor stopped mid-sentence. Every head in the church turned to stare at my mother, then at me. The silence was deafening. I felt my knees buckle, my vision going black around the edges. My brother Gareth shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but didn't defend me. His wife Felicia actually nodded in agreement. "I warned everyone this would happen," my mother continued, standing now, addressing the congregation like she was giving testimony. "I told the divorce court she was an unfit mother, but nobody listened to me. And now look, now my granddaughter is dead because her mother couldn't be bothered to manage her basic medical needs." Preston, my ex-husband, stood up from his pew across the aisle. "Renata's right," he said, his voice carrying that same self-righteous tone he'd used during our custody hearings. "I fought for custody because I knew Vera was negligent. She's always been a selfish mother, putting her career and her social life before our children. I have the court documents to prove it. The judge should have listened when we warned him." My chest felt like it was caving in. I couldn't breathe. My own mother and my ex-husband were standing at my daughter's funeral, telling everyone that I had killed her. The whispers started immediately. I could hear fragments. "Always knew something was off. Poor little girl. Some people shouldn't have children. How does she live with herself?" Aunt Felicia stood up next. "We all saw the signs," she added, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Vera was always farming those kids out to babysitters, always working late, always had some excuse for why she couldn't attend school events. That poor baby probably felt so neglected." Uncle Gareth finally spoke, though he remained seated. "Mom tried to help," he said, gesturing to Renata. "She offered to take the kids so many times, but Vera was too proud, too stubborn. And now Mira's paid the price for her mother's selfishness." The church felt like it was spinning. 100 faces stared at me with judgment, disgust, some with pity that was almost worse. These people had known me my whole life. They'd watched me grow up in this church, get married here, baptize both my children here. Now they were watching my mother systematically destroy me at my daughter's funeral. That's when Jonah stood up. My 10-year-old son, who'd been sitting beside me so quietly I'd almost forgotten he was there, rose to his feet. His small face was calm, determined in a way that made him look older than his years. He pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up high enough for everyone to see. "Grandma Renata," he said, his young voice cutting through the whispers and gasps. "Should I show everyone the video from that night? The one where you took Mira's inhaler away and hid it? The one where you made Mom beg while Mira was dying on the floor?" The church went completely silent, not even a cough or a shuffled foot. "I have 43 minutes of footage," Jonah continued, his voice steady and clear. "Every second from when you said Mira was faking her asthma attack to when the ambulance finally came. Want to see what really happened to my sister?" My mother's face drained of all color. Preston's mouth fell open. The entire congregation seemed to hold its breath at once, waiting to see what a 10-year-old boy was about to reveal about the night his sister died. 3 days before I stood in that church, I was living a completely different life. It was Tuesday morning, and I'd just finished a 12-hour night shift at Riverside Medical Center. My scrubs smelled like antiseptic, and exhaustion clung to every bone in my body. But I smiled when I saw the photo of Mira and Jonah on my locker door. Mira had lost her front tooth the week before, and her gap-toothed grin lit up that picture like sunshine. Being a single mother and a night shift nurse wasn't easy, but we'd found our rhythm. The divorce from Preston had been finalized 8 months earlier, and despite his attempts to paint me as an unstable parent in court, I'd kept primary custody. Preston got weekends, which he usually canceled at the last minute for urgent business trips that his Instagram revealed were golf weekends with his new girlfriend, Stephanie. My mother, Renata, had actually testified against me during the custody hearing. Vera works inappropriate hours, she'd told the judge. She leaves those children with strangers. She's been on 3 dates in the past month. Her priorities are clearly confused, the judge had noted her. Concerns but ultimately ruled in my favor, though Preston's lawyer made sure her testimony was part of the permanent record. That Tuesday was supposed to be simple. Mira had gymnastics at 4 o'clock, her favorite part of the week. She'd been working on her back walkover for months and had finally nailed it the previous Thursday. Her coach, Miss Diana, said she was a natural. That girl has springs in her feet and joy in her heart, she'd told me. She could go far if she keeps at it. Jonah had chess club after school until 5, which usually gave me just enough time to sleep from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then get up and manage the evening routine. But that day, I'd been mandated to stay an extra 2 hours at the hospital due to a multi-car accident that flooded our emergency department. I wouldn't make it home until after 5. I'd called my mother at 6 in the morning, hating that I needed her help. "Mom, I'm stuck at work. Can you pick up Mira from gymnastics at 5? Just this once? I'll be home by 5:15 at the latest." Her sigh was heavy with judgment. "This is exactly what I mean, Vera. You can't manage your life. What kind of mother doesn't arrange proper childcare? Mom, please. It's an emergency. People are literally dying here." "Fine. But we're going to have a serious conversation about your lifestyle choices. This job of yours is destroying your family. First Preston leaves, and now you can barely manage basic pickup schedules." I'd bitten my tongue so hard it bled. "Thank you, Mom." Her inhaler is in her gym bag just in case. The weather's been triggering her asthma lately. "I raised 2 children, Vera. I think I know how to handle a simple pickup." The rest of my shift blurred together. A teenager who'd been ejected from a car, an elderly man having a heart attack, a construction worker with a severed finger. By the time I finally left at 5:10 p.m., still in my scrubs because I hadn't had time to change, all I wanted was to hug my kids and fall into bed. The drive home took exactly 7 minutes. I remember because I watched every red second tick by on my dashboard clock, anxiety creeping up my spine for no reason I could name. Maybe it was mother's intuition. Maybe it was just exhaustion making me paranoid. But something felt wrong. I pulled into my driveway at 5:17 p.m. My mother's silver Lexus was parked crooked, taking up half the lawn. That was unusual. Renata was obsessively particular about parking. The front door was ajar, also strange. My mother believed in locked doors and drawn curtains, privacy above all else. "Mom!" I called out as I pushed the door open. "Kids?" The living room was too quiet. No TV, no laughter, no sound of Mira practicing her floor routine on the carpet like she usually did after gymnastics. Just an oppressive silence that made my skin crawl. Then I saw them. My mother sitting rigid on the couch, her purse clutched in her lap, her mouth set in that thin line that meant someone had disappointed her. Jonah pressed against the wall by the bookshelf, his face pale, his eyes wide with something that looked like terror. And Mira on the floor by the coffee table, her face flushed bright red, her chest heaving with labored breaths that barely seemed to bring in air, her lips already tinged with blue. My beautiful, bouncing daughter was drowning in her own living room, and my mother was just watching it happen. "She's being dramatic," my mother announced before I could even process what I was seeing. I told her no TV until she cleaned her room, and she immediately started this performance. "This is what happens when you don't maintain proper discipline, Vera. She thinks she can manipulate her way out of consequences." I dropped to my knees beside Mira, my medical training kicking in even as my mother's heart shattered. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, and ineffective. Her small chest was working so hard that I could see every rib with each desperate attempt to pull in air. The wheeze coming from her lungs sounded like a broken whistle. This wasn't an anxiety attack or a tantrum. This was a severe asthma attack, worse than any she'd had before. "Where's her inhaler?" I scrambled for her gym bag, dumping its contents across the floor. Leotard, water bottle, hair ties, but no inhaler. "Mom, where is her rescue inhaler?" "I took it away," Renata said calmly, as if discussing the weather. She was pretending to need it every 5 minutes. "I know manipulation when I see it, Vera. You were exactly the same at her age, always finding some illness or injury to get attention." My hands shook as I ran to the kitchen, yanking open the medicine cabinet where we kept a backup inhaler. Empty. I sprinted to the bathroom. Nothing. Mira's wheezing was getting worse, her skin now taking on a grayish tint that sent ice through my veins. "Mom, where did you put it?" I screamed, racing back to the living room. "She needs it now." "It's in a safe place where she can't use it to avoid her responsibilities," my mother replied, pulling out her phone. "And don't raise your voice at me." I'm documenting this entire episode. The court needs to see how you handle simple, disciplinary situations. All this hysteria over a child holding her breath. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, putting it on speaker as I positioned Mira to help her breathing. "911, what's your emergency?" "My daughter is having a severe asthma attack. 8 years old. She's cyanotic and her inhaler has been hidden from us. I need an ambulance at 427 Maple Avenue now." "Ma'am, we're dispatching emergency services immediately. Is she conscious?" Mira's eyes were open but unfocused, her small hands clawing at her throat as if she could physically open her airways. "Yes, but barely responsive. She's been without medication for unknown duration, possibly 20 minutes or more." My mother stood up, her phone's camera pointed at me. "Tell them the truth. Vera, tell them you forgot to refill her prescription because you were out with that man from the hospital last weekend. Tell them you've been neglecting her medical needs." "Mom, stop!" Jonah suddenly yelled from his corner. "Mira is dying. Can't you see she's dying?" "Don't be dramatic, Jonah. Your sister is fine. This is what she does when she doesn't want to follow rules. Your mother has enabled this behavior for far too long." Renata moved closer with her phone. "Vera, look at the camera. Admit that you've been an absent mother. Admit that you prioritize your social life over your children's well-being." I tried to ignore her, focusing on Mira. I'd started rescue breathing, trying to force air into her constricted lungs. Between breaths, I begged, "Mom, please, if you have any love for your granddaughter, give me the inhaler. Please, I'm begging you. Not until you tell the truth on camera. Say it, Vera. Say you're an unfit mother. Say you shouldn't have custody. Say Preston was right about you." Mira's body was starting to go limp. The wheeze was fading, not because she was better, but because she was too weak to fight anymore. I could hear sirens in the distance, but they seemed so far away. "Fine," I sobbed, looking directly at her camera while still trying to breathe for my daughter. "I'm a terrible mother. I work too much. I'm selfish. Whatever you want me to say, I'll say it. Just give me the inhaler." "Be specific," my mother commanded. "Tell them about last weekend. Tell them about the 3 men you've dated. Tell them how you leave the children with strangers." The sirens were getting closer. Jonah had moved from his corner, and I saw him holding his own phone, but I was too focused on Mira to process what he was doing. "I went on a date last Saturday," I cried, the words ripping out of me between rescue breaths. "I've been on 3 dates since the divorce. I use babysitters when I work. Is that what you want to hear? Now, please." My mother smiled, a cold, satisfied expression. "The inhaler is in my purse." But I think we've all learned a valuable lesson here about actions and consequences. The paramedics burst through the door just as she said those words, their equipment and professionalism filling the room like salvation arriving too late. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, immediately placing an oxygen mask over Mira's face and administering epinephrine through her thigh. "How long has she been without her medication?" the lead EMT asked while his partner started an IV line. "At least 20 minutes, I said, my voice breaking. "Maybe longer." My mother took her inhaler and wouldn't tell me where it was. The EMT's eyes flashed with something between disbelief and rage, but he stayed focused on Mira. "We need to move now. She's in severe respiratory failure." They lifted my baby onto the stretcher, her small body looking even tinier surrounded by medical equipment. I climbed into the ambulance while my mother followed in her car with Jonah. During the ride, I held Mira's hand and watched the paramedics work, inserting breathing tubes, pushing medications, their faces grim with concentration. At Riverside Medical Center, my own workplace, my colleagues' faces went white when they saw me stumbling in behind Mira's stretcher. Dr. Patel, who'd eaten lunch with me just 18 hours earlier, took charge immediately. "Vera, we've got her. Go to waiting room 3. I'll update you as soon as I can." The waiting room filled quickly. My mother walked in first, still holding her phone. Still recording. "This is what happens when you leave children with incompetent caregivers," she announced to no one in particular. "If I hadn't been there, who knows what would have happened?" Jonah sat beside me, pressed against my side. That's when he whispered the words that would change everything. "Mom, I need to show you something." He pulled out his phone, glancing nervously at his grandmother. I recorded everything, from when Grandma first took Mira's inhaler until the ambulance came. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" When we got home from school, Mira asked for her inhaler because she felt tight. Grandma said she was faking and took it from her backpack. I started recording because something felt wrong. I hid behind the couch and kept recording when Grandma made you say all those things while Mira was on the floor. My brother Gareth arrived with his wife Felicia, both of them immediately gravitating toward my mother. "Renata called us," Gareth said coldly. "She said you had some kind of breakdown when Mira had a mild asthma episode." "Mild?" I stood up, my entire body shaking. "She was in respiratory failure." "Mom hid her inhaler as punishment." "Don't be ridiculous," Felicia interjected. "Your mother would never endanger a child. You're just trying to shift blame because you forgot to refill the prescription." Preston burst through the doors next, his girlfriend Stephanie trailing behind. "I knew this would happen," he said loudly. "I told the judge you couldn't handle the responsibility. When Mira recovers, I'm filing for emergency custody of both kids." "If she recovers," my mother added, her voice carrying that particular tone of false concern she'd perfected over decades. "With that level of oxygen deprivation, there could be brain damage. Poor child failed by the one person who should protect her." Jonah tugged on my sleeve again. "Mom, should I show them the video now?" Before I could answer, "Doctor." Patel appeared in the doorway. Her face told me everything before she spoke. My legs gave out and Gareth had to catch me as doctor. Patel's words destroyed my world. "Vera, I'm so sorry. We did everything possible. The prolonged lack of oxygen caused cardiac arrest. We worked on her for 90 minutes, but we couldn't bring her back. Mira passed away at 11:47 p.m. The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was the sound of a mother's soul, being ripped from her body." Preston actually staggered backward. Even Stephanie started crying. But my mother, my own mother, straightened her shoulders and said, "This is what comes from negligence. I hope you've all witnessed what happens when mothers put themselves before their children." Jonah stood up, tears streaming down his face, and held his phone high. "You killed her, Grandma. I have it all on video. You took her inhaler at 4:23 p.m. You said she was faking at 4:31. You wouldn't give it back even when she turned blue at 4:47. You made Mom beg while Mira was dying at 5:19. You killed my sister, and I recorded every second of it." The waiting room went silent. My mother's face went from self-righteous to shocked. "Jonah, darling, you don't understand what you saw." "I understand perfectly," my 10-year-old son said with a clarity that stunned everyone. "I understand that you cared more about punishing Mom than saving Mira. I understand that you're a murderer. And I understand that everyone needs to see exactly what you did." He looked at me, his young face old with grief and determination. "Mom, we need to call the police." Grandma needs to answer for what she did to Mira. She needs everyone to know the truth. 3 days later, we were back in that church, and Jonah had just announced he had video evidence of what really happened. The entire congregation sat frozen, waiting to see if a 10-year-old boy would really expose his grandmother at his sister's funeral. "This is inappropriate," Pastor Whitman said, stepping forward from the pulpit. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately after the service." "No," Jonah said firmly, his small finger hovering over his phone screen. "Everyone here just heard Grandma and Preston blame my mom for Mira's death. They deserve to know the truth. My sister deserves for people to know the truth." My mother stood up, her face cycling through emotions like a broken television. "Jonah, sweetheart, you're confused and grieving. Why don't you sit down and let the adults handle this?" "Like you handled Mira's asthma attack?" Jonah asked. The church gasped collectively. He pressed play. The church's sound system, still connected to the wireless microphone system, picked up his phone's audio through some technical miracle. Suddenly, my mother's voice filled the sanctuary, clear and undeniable. "Stop being so dramatic, Mira. You're not getting that inhaler back until you clean your room properly. These fake breathing problems won't work on me." Then Mira's voice, small and scared. "Grandma, please, I can't breathe good." "That's I can't breathe well, and yes, you can. You're talking, aren't you? If you can talk, you can breathe. Now get up off that floor and clean your room." The sound of labored breathing filled the church. Several people in the pews started crying. I saw Mrs. Patterson, who'd taught Mira in Sunday school, covered her mouth in horror. The video continued. "Grandma, she's turning red," Jonah's voice said from behind the camera. "She really needs her inhaler." "Don't you start too, Jonah." "I know fake illness when I see it. Your mother pulled the same stunts when she was young. This is learned behavior, and I won't enable it." Fast-forward sounds indicated Jonah skipping ahead. Then my voice burst through the speakers, desperate and breaking. "Mom, where is her inhaler?" Safe from manipulative little girls who use medical conditions to avoid responsibility. "Look at this camera, Vera. Tell everyone what a failure you are as a mother." "Mom, she's dying." "She's acting." "But you know what? Let's make this useful. Look at this camera and admit you're an unfit mother, or I'll tell the judge you let her have an asthma attack through negligence. Your choice, Vera. Confess or lose both kids." The sound of my sobbing filled the church, my voice broken and desperate. "Fine. I'm a terrible mother. I'm selfish. I work too much. I date men. Whatever you want me to say, just give me her inhaler. Be more specific. Tell them about last weekend. I went on a date. I left them with a babysitter. I'm a horrible person. Now please give me the inhaler." It's in my purse. But I think we've all learned something about consequences today. Then the EMT's voice, professional but with an edge of barely controlled anger. "Ma'am, are you saying you deliberately withheld emergency medication from this child?" "I was teaching her a lesson about manipulation. This child is in cardiac arrest because she couldn't breathe. You withheld life-saving medication. Do you understand that?" My mother's voice still defiant. "She was being dramatic. I've raised children. I know the difference." Jonah stopped the video. The church was absolutely silent except for the sound of crying from multiple pews. My mother stood frozen, her face white as paper. Preston had sunk back into his seat, his head in his hands. Uncle Gareth had physically moved away from my mother, pulling Felicia with him. "There's 41 more minutes," Jonah said quietly. "Do you want to hear the part where the doctor says Mira might have lived if she'd gotten her inhaler even 5 minutes earlier? Or the part where Grandma tells the police that Mom must have hidden the inhaler herself to make her look bad?" Pastor Whitman walked slowly down from the pulpit. "Renata, is this real? Did you really withhold medication from a child having an asthma attack?" My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air, ironic considering what she'd done to Mira. "She was faking," she finally whispered. "She had to be faking. I know my grandchildren. I know when they're lying. You knew nothing." I stood up, my voice carrying strength I didn't know I had. "You knew nothing about my daughter except how to hurt her. You killed her because you wanted to punish me. You killed an 8-year-old girl to prove a point about discipline." The police officers who'd been attending, the funeral in uniform, friends of mine from the hospital, stood up and moved toward my mother. Officer Reynolds, who'd coached Jonah's little league team, spoke gently but firmly. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us. This video constitutes evidence of criminal negligence resulting in death." As they led my mother out of the church, she turned back one more time. "She was faking," she said to the congregation. "Children fake illness. They manipulate. I was teaching her to be strong." The church doors closed behind her, and the silence that followed was deafening. The funeral ended in chaos. Half the congregation followed the police cars outside, while others surrounded Jonah and me, apologizing, crying, asking how they could help. Pastor Whitman had to abandon his prepared sermon and instead led a prayer for Mira's soul and our family's healing. Preston left without saying another word, Stephanie trailing behind him, both of their faces shell-shocked. Uncle Gareth approached me with tears in his eyes, the first time I'd seen him cry since we were children. "Vera, I'm so sorry," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I believed her. I always believed her. God forgive me, I helped her testify against you in court. I thought you were just being sensitive about her parenting advice." The police investigation moved quickly. The video Jonah recorded was crystal clear evidence. My mother was charged with involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment. During the investigation, more stories surfaced. My cousin Rita came forward about how my mother had refused to give her son his EpiPen during an allergic reaction, claiming he was being dramatic about a little rash. The reaction had progressed to full anaphylaxis before Rita arrived and administered the medication herself. 3 other relatives shared similar stories, all with the same pattern. My mother deciding that medical conditions were behavioral problems that needed discipline, not treatment. The trial lasted 6 weeks. My mother's defense attorney tried to argue that she genuinely believed Mira was faking, that this was a generational difference in parenting styles. But the prosecution played Jonah's full video, all 43 minutes of it. The jury saw my mother calmly doing her crossword puzzle while Mira gasped for air in the background. They heard her tell me to stop being hysterical when I was performing CPR on my daughter. They watched her try to delete the video from Jonah's phone when she thought no one was looking at the hospital. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time and said, "I was trying to make her strong." Even then, even after everything, she couldn't admit she was wrong. She couldn't say sorry. She couldn't acknowledge that her need for control had killed my baby. Preston dropped his custody petition the day after the funeral. He actually showed up at my door with papers giving me full custody and increasing child support. "I was wrong," he said, unable to meet my eyes. "I was so angry about the divorce that I wanted to hurt you. I never imagined something like this could happen. I'm sorry, Vera. I'm so sorry about everything." Jonah and I moved to Oregon 6 months later. We needed a fresh start, away from the house where Mira had died, away from the people who would forever look at us with that mixture of pity and curiosity. I got a day shift position at a smaller hospital. Jonah started at a new school where nobody knew our story. We went to therapy twice a week, sometimes together, sometimes separately. "Why did you record it?" I asked Jonah one day during a joint session. "Because Grandma had been mean to Mira before," he said simply. "Small things. Taking her dessert away when she said her stomach hurt, making her run laps when she said her chest felt tight. I knew something bad might happen. I wanted proof in case nobody believed us. My 10-year-old son had been protecting his sister the only way he knew how, and it still wasn't enough. But it was enough to protect me from a lifetime of blame, enough to ensure justice, enough to show the world who really failed Mira that night. We visit Mira's grave once a month. We bring daisies because they were her favorite, and we tell her about our new life. Jonah tells her about his new school, his chess tournaments, the friend he made who also loves astronomy. I tell her about the Pediatric Asthma Foundation I started in her name, ensuring low-income families have access to emergency inhalers. We've distributed over 3,000 inhalers so far. Last week, Jonah said something that broke and healed my heart simultaneously. "Mom, Mira would be proud of us. We told the truth. We made sure everyone knew what happened, and we're helping other kids not die like she did. That's what she would want." He's right. The truth didn't bring Mira back, but it prevented my mother from ever hurting another child. It showed the world that sometimes the real danger comes from those who claim to love us most. It taught us that documentation can be protection, that children's voices matter, that when someone says they can't breathe, you believe them immediately. My daughter died because someone decided her medical emergency was a behavioral issue. Let that sink in. How many children suffer in silence because adults dismiss their pain? How many don't survive it? How many parents are blamed for tragedies they try desperately to prevent? This is Mira's story, but it's also a warning. Listen to your children. Believe their pain, trust their distress, and never ever let anyone make you doubt your instincts when your child needs help. Those instincts exist for a reason. They're the difference between life and death. If this story touched you, please like this video and share it with others who need to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts and experiences, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful real-life stories that shed light on important truths. Remember, sharing these stories could save a life. You never know who needs to hear that their instincts are valid, that their pain is real, and that they deserve to be believed.